I'm Jason with the All Things Open team. I'm here with Shivay. We're going to talk about large language models, achieving AI at scale with Kubernetes, and much more. Shivay, please introduce yourself to the All Things Open community.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Shivay. I currently work at Couchbase. It's a NoSQL database company as a developer evangelist, or you can call it a developer relations engineer. So most of my day-to-day work is building things, really cool demos and integrations with the help of generative AI, such as AI agents or vector search. So those are the things that I'm pretty much playing around on a day-to-day basis. But apart from that, I'm also a proactive contributor to open source projects like Kubernetes, WebAssembly, a project called Wasm Edge. So I like to diversify my interests in AI, WebAssembly.
Sounds great. I want to talk more about large language models. You're passionate about fine-tuning LLMs. What does this mean to you, and why is it important?
Yeah, so I think one of the core fundamentals of LLMs is that while they have been trained on vast amount of data, when you look at enterprises and how they adopt LLMs, a lot of times the native module or the native model will not just work out of the box for them, because they are dealing with a lot of proprietary data on which these LLMs have not been trained upon. Now, there are three different ways in which you can address this problem. One is like completely retraining a model from scratch, but that would be too expensive, because as we know that these models are so heavy, they take probably like months and tons of GPUs to just run these. We have seen this where OpenAI has said that they're still losing money because they train these models, and the amount that they're charging from people, it's very less, right? So the other alternative is that you don't retrain the entire model, but you just adjust certain weights of the model. And because the idea is that these large language models are still based on the core principle of deep learning models, which have these weights and biases. So the weights are what basically store the metadata of the original training dataset. So idea is that you don't just go ahead and retrain everything from scratch, but you slightly adjust some of these weights in your model, which are done on the basis of a set of new data set that you have just prepared just for the fine tuning. So it's a lot cheaper as compared to doing like full retraining, but it still gives you the performance benefits of being able to optimize these LLMs for a business use case. So any company who is trying to leverage an LLM, I think it's for a business critical use case, you don't want to spend too much money on retraining, then fine tuning is your best option, because it's cheaper and it brings more accuracy for the models when you're trying to deploy them in a use case like a customer chatbot. So for example, like you're building a support chatbot, and rather than giving you like a generic answer, you fine tune it based on the previous threads or all of your support tickets that have been asked earlier, so that if there is a similar kind of query that has been asked by a new user, you can then reply them with a supporting answer.
Thanks for sharing that information. Want to get some more of your knowledge. What's a declarative ML?
Yeah, so the idea here is that, as we know, that whether it's retraining or fine-tuning these models, it's still very expensive because you need GPUs, right? Now, if you look at how DevOps teams have generally worked, they don't come necessarily with a lot of experience deploying machine learning models. So SRE teams, they might be well equipped with Kubernetes, Docker, but when you talk about software versus machine learning, there are some critical differences, because machine learning is a lot more compute intensive, right? So just taking an example of a GPT-4o model, it will probably require you to have thousands of GPUs to train that model, and it can be very expensive. So the idea here is then, rather than just simply throwing some GPUs and doing the training, which will be very expensive, what you do is that you define, because as we know that within machine learning, there are multiple steps. There is the data preparation step, then there is the training of the model, and then there is running validation. So across each and every different part of your machine learning workflow, you declare what is the amount of compute resources that you want to basically give to that particular step. So something like data cleaning will not require a lot of compute. So you can just assign CPU over there. But for training, which requires the most amount of compute, you will say that I need 4 GPUs for this workload. Validation similarly might not require as much amount of GPUs. So this way you selectively pick and choose your infrastructure for specific parts of your machine learning workload, and that makes it a lot more a lot more resource friendly and also cost effective.
How are people using Kubernetes to achieve AI at scale?
Yeah, I think Kubernetes, it's no secret. Last year we celebrated 10 years of Kubernetes. It is an open source technology that has really impacted the cloud space, as we know. right? There's no formal introduction needed for Kubernetes as such. But we are seeing a significant adoption of Kubernetes for also running AI workloads. So as I mentioned that whether we talk about fine tuning, whether we talk about inference of these LLMs or even just regular AI models, it requires you to have technology that can scale up, because when you have multiple people coming in with requests trying to use your model, it is very resource and compute intensive. So you want a technology that has the scalability that can really perform well. So just take an example of OpenAI. They have released this very famous blog post where all of their training clusters for all of their state-of-the-art models are completely trained on GPUs that are running on top of Kubernetes, because as we know that Kubernetes is a truly distributed technology, and it has native support for being able to then add GPUs to your pods, and you can do things like GPU sharding or time slicing of your GPUs. Again, I'll not probably go too deep into them, but these are techniques where you can basically run the fine tuning and training of your models in a much more effective manner, and you get the scalability of Kubernetes where you can deploy it on a on-prem cluster, or perhaps if you have a cloud-based hosting, you get a lot of flexibility when it comes to using Kubernetes as a technology. So we have just seen that it has very seamlessly transitioned from core software to also then working very well with AI workloads.
Kubernetes, 10 years, can't believe it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of discussion about AI's role in development. Do you think AI will replace developers?
I don't think so. There will be certain aspects where it will, like probably like if you talk about the baseline software testing, or probably like writing very basic level code. We are already seeing technologies like V0 from Vercel, like it can create full-fledged front ends, and now there are technologies like GitHub Copilot agents which can generate full stack apps for you. But I think fundamentally there is still a challenge that they will not be still like production ready. You still need someone who understands the code from base level, and then they can make those level of optimizations. So when it comes to like proper system design, where you're trying to design scalable systems and you want to have proper high level design and low level design, you still need software architects. So I think what us as developers will do is that we'll wear that hat of a software architect, where we no longer is concerned about writing that HTML code, but we are actually now perfecting it and we are optimizing it, which AI might also become better, but we'll still be the guiding force for that AI. Yeah.
Sounds good. What's a new tool that you've been using lately to boost your productivity?
Yeah, so I have been using this tool called Pieces for Developers. Now, it is not technically an open source project, but you can actually run it. You can run small language models which are completely open source directly on your system. And the idea here is that when we talk about productivity, right, as developers, it's not just the code that we write in our IDE. We use a multitude of different tools, right? So we constantly transition between Slack for messaging, or perhaps like we are on GitHub answering a query, or we are reviewing a PR, and then we are going back to our code. A lot of times there might be use cases where all of these are involved. Like let's say your manager gives you a task on Jira. So you go through that entire Jira task and you start to implement it. You have discussion with manager on Slack. Now there's no specific tool that can give you context of everything and how all of these are linked with each other. It will only have context of your ID, right? So we are looking at open source tools like Recall, and there are in fact like open source projects written in Rust that also do this. So they will basically take a screen grab of your entire screen from time to time and store these screenshots locally. It will run an OCR again locally in your system and save these in a vector database. And then with the help of that, now it's not only aware of what you did, like let's say 10 minutes ago, but then it will be able to understand the context from your Slack and how is it related to your ID. So that's, I think, like the best productivity booster, where you don't have to worry about your time getting split across multiple tools, and you still get relevant contexts interlinked between different tools.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
What's one tip, best practice, or piece of advice you'd like to share with the ATO community?
Yeah, I think as we know that ATO as a brand for open source, it's there, right? There's no formal introduction needed. But one feedback that I'll probably give to everyone is that definitely if you ever get a chance, do come and attend ATO, because it is the best open source conference that I've been part of. And trust me, like I go to a lot of conferences, right? A lot of them are vendor focused. This is pure community, run by a community. And of course, ATO has its call for proposals open right now. I'm not sure when this podcast get published, but you can always apply for the next year because it's always looking for people who are building good and maintaining good open source projects, right? So I'll say that just come and apply.
Sounds great. Thanks for sharing, and thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
All right.